The water erupted around Haley's small body like an explosion in slow motion. 1 second, she was standing beside me in her pink hoodie, still glowing from dance practice. The next, she was sinking beneath the surface, her dark hair spreading like ink through the chlorinated blue. My scream tore from somewhere deeper than my lungs. It was the sound a mother makes when she watches her child disappear. But before I could move, iron fingers clamped around my throat from behind. My father's voice hissed in my ear. "Stop. She needs to learn. If she can't survive water, she doesn't have the right to live." I clawed at his forearm with everything I had, my vision tunneling as Haley's wide eyes searched for me through the water. 8 years old, fully clothed, panicking. Rachel stood at the pool's edge, laughing like she'd just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke. "My name is Dana. I'm 29 and a single mother. This is the story of how I built a fortress they could never breach." The barbecue had started like every family gathering, with me forcing myself to stay neutral, keep distance, maintain my guard. I'd spent my whole life being the family's target while Rachel played golden child, but I kept showing up because my mother's guilt trips were surgical. "People are noticing how distant you are. Don't embarrass us because you can't move on from childhood nonsense." Childhood nonsense. That's what they called years of systematic humiliation. But today was different. Today, they crossed a line that parents aren't supposed to cross. They put my daughter in danger. When Rachel shoved Haley into that deep water, when my father held me back while she struggled, when my mother stood there sipping her drink and watching her granddaughter fight for air. Something fundamental shifted in my chest, something hard and final. I broke free from my father's grip with a backward kick that sent him stumbling. The chlorine burned my eyes as I dove in, wrapping my arms around Haley's trembling body and kicking us both to the surface. She coughed up pool water, her small frame shaking against my chest. "Drama queen," my mother said, rolling her eyes. "Over one dip." That's when I knew. This wasn't a family anymore. This was a threat system. And while Haley shivered in my arms, still coughing foam from the corners of her mouth, I made a decision that would change everything. Their world was about to break, and they wouldn't see it coming. My hands were still shaking when I dialed 911. The operator's calm voice guided me through, keeping Haley warm, positioning her on her side, monitoring her breathing. The paramedics arrived with that quiet competence that made the panic in my chest shrink just enough to function. They wrapped her in blankets, checked her vitals, and told me we were going to the hospital for observation. In the ambulance, with Haley's head on my lap and her eyelids fluttering like a bird trying to steady itself, I realized something powerful. I had allies I'd never thought to call. Systems designed to protect children, professionals trained to document harm, legal frameworks that could enforce what I could never enforce alone. The ER doctor asked exactly the questions that made my parents' lies impossible to maintain. Who pushed her? Who restrained you from helping? The social worker took detailed notes. The nurse held Haley's hand while I gave my statement, and I saw recognition in her eyes, the look of someone who'd seen horror disguised as family before. Within hours, the machinery of protection was in motion. Police statements, witness testimony from cousins who finally admitted what they'd seen, documentation of my father's comment about children who don't have the right to live. CPS referral filed before midnight. After Haley was discharged the next morning, the hospital social worker helped us arrange emergency housing at a nearby family shelter while our safety plan was finalized. By dawn, Maria from Child Protective Services was sitting in our temporary room, explaining emergency safety plans with steady eyes and bureaucratic precision. Supervised visitation only, temporary safety orders, school notifications with confidential codes, the mechanisms of protection finally activated. But I wasn't just building walls. I was systematically removing the pillars that had always supported their cruelty. My father had built his identity around hosting those backyard gatherings, being the center of social events where friends brought expensive trucks and poured wine. Using the church directory I'd kept from years of forced attendance, I made one phone call to his co-host, explaining the situation in plain terms. The next gathering was moved to adults only, away from the house, his social stage suddenly empty. I met privately with their pastor, giving a factual account without venom. A child endangered, witnesses present, a grandfather who prevented rescue. Within days, my father's name quietly disappeared from youth volunteer rosters. No public spectacle, just institutions closing doors he used to walk through with swagger. My lawyer, referred through the shelter's legal aid program, drafted protection letters. New phone numbers appeared. Mailing addresses changed. Emergency contacts updated. Small bureaucratic moves that cost nothing in spectacle but everything in safety. I taught Haley to float, to shout for help in a calm voice. Lessons wrapped in empowerment rather than fear. The beauty of systematic protection is that it operates below the surface. While they expected drama, expected fights they could manipulate and win, the real work happened in offices and filing systems. Police reports created permanent records. Medical documentation established timelines. School protocols activated invisible shields. 3 weeks later, after the protective orders had been formally reviewed and extended, I returned to collect Haley's belongings. Not alone. Never alone again. Maria from CPS walked beside me. A police officer followed behind. My parents looked confused, like children suddenly realizing no adult was coming to save them. "We're here to retrieve the child's personal items," the officer said when my mother tried to start her usual rant. "This is not a negotiation." I packed Haley's dolls, her sketchbook, her pajamas, everything that belonged to our real life. When I came downstairs, they were standing in their living room like people who'd just discovered gravity worked differently than they'd thought. I looked my father directly in the eyes for the first time in my adult life without fear. "You will never have access to my child again. Not supervised, not public, not holidays, not ever." He laughed. That pathetic half-laugh bullies make when they're not sure their intimidation is working anymore. But it died halfway out because the officer was already handing him papers. The emergency no-contact order, active immediately. 300 feet minimum distance from Haley. All of them. No warning, no negotiation. No chance to argue their way back in. That was my revenge. Not a speech, not a dramatic confrontation. I demolished the only weapon they'd ever had. Access. I took the thing they valued most, their ability to hurt us, and made it legally impossible. As that front door closed behind me, Haley's hand in mine, Maria on one side and the officer on the other, I heard the silence inside their house. The hollow echo of people who just realized they weren't the heroes of this story. They hadn't lost a fight. They'd lost us forever. And the systems they'd spent decades dismissing as bureaucratic nonsense had just become the walls of their new reality. 6 months later, the CPS investigation was concluded with a finding of child endangerment, and the temporary protective orders became permanent. The prosecutor declined to press criminal charges, but the civil protection remained absolute. My family was legally barred from any contact with us indefinitely. Haley sleeps through the night. She draws pictures of dinosaurs learning to swim. She laughs at breakfast and picks up crayons without fear. Watching her steady recovery while the people who caused her harm were slowly erased from all the roles that had given them power. That felt like the deepest kind of justice. Not revenge that feeds on drama, but protection that builds something stronger than what they destroyed. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.